I see that it's just past 6 o'clock, so I believe we'll begin. I know most of you in the room, but not everybody. My name is Jerry Paul. I'm the incoming president of Maine Maritime Academy. Thank you for taking the time to come out this evening for the beginning of the public phase of the process that we're going through for renovating, upgrading, and updating the pier on the waterfront in order to host the next training ship. I see this as a historic moment that's about to occur for Castine, for the Maine Maritime Academy, for the entire state of Maine, and for the United States of America. This really ultimately will cap off many years, as much as 15, I'm told, when an extraordinary number of people have worked together from Washington to Maine to make this possible. It transcends 3 presidents, countless members of the U.S. House and U.S. Senate, our own congressional senatorial delegation, which has been extraordinarily supportive. My understanding is the concept actually emerged about 15 years ago in the halls of Congress when it was recognized that this traditional model of the Maritime Academies borrowing a ship from MARAD, or the Maritime Administration, from the Ready Reserve Fleet and repurposing them could be improved by actually constructing purpose-built vessels. And ultimately, the decision was made to do that. Of course, the Maritime Academies are responsible for adapting their piers to be able to host those vessels with different mooring points and so on. And we at Maine Maritime Academy are in the first phase of what will be waterfront development over time. Phase 1 limited essentially just to the upgrade and improvement of the pier itself. There'll be subsequent phases going forward that will involve development of the waterfront, redevelopment of it, upgrading the buildings, and I think through that process, as with this one, work closely with the town of Castine. I see it as a huge opportunity to do a lot of the things that have been mentioned by members of Castine over many years. By way of background, I've been president at Maine Maritime Academy now for 1 complete semester. I am not new to Castine or Maine Maritime. I was a student here in the 1980s. My wife, Christy, in the back, raise your hand, son. She and I were both here in the 80s, me as a student, and it's just been wonderful to come back. I want to thank the entire town for the way they've really just welcomed us, been warm and inviting, and true Southern hospitality, if you will. I want to also pause for a moment and thank the entire community for the way they rallied around and rallied together after the terrible tragedy that occurred during this last semester. This is the first public meeting that I've been at since that. I see people in the room who were involved in that intimately. Mr. Stearns, Chief Stearns, thank you for everything that you and your team did. Thank you for everything you did to leverage the asset of, but also protect the interests of our students. But I thank the entire community for that. As to the training ship, it's called a National Security Multi-Mission Vessel. It's titled that way because it is crucial to the national security interests of the United States of America, which includes its maritime interests. The ability to continuously put a fleet of licensed professional mariners on the seas to operate our vessels that support our economy, but also support the security interests of our Navy, particularly on official deployments. But what's different about this evolution, in addition to the U.S. government funding the construction of a vessel, is that it's multi-purpose, meaning that it's also to be deployed for humanitarian efforts. It's a way for that vessel, for this country, for the town of Castine, and for Maine Maritime Academy to extend its goodwill and kindness and humanitarian efforts to people all across the world who may need it in times of trouble. And this vessel is going to be available to do that and will be deployed from time to time to do that as well. Here in Castine, of course, its primary goal will be to serve as a training platform as we produce generation after generation of mariners to extend the footprint of Castine and Maine Maritime Academy all across the world as it has done for the last 80 years. I have to my left Mr. Eric Mora, who is the Senior Project Manager for the design and reconstruction of the pier to be able to host the training ship. I also have others in the audience who we may be able to rely upon for additional information going forward. I'm going to defer for a moment to Rachel Catoni and also to Kate Noel, who have arranged the event today, and I want to first thank them for doing that, but also just defer to them and ask them how we want to begin with the slides.
Okay. So quickly, an introduction. I was brought onto this project back in April to assist the Academy on first building a design team to put together the plans for the new pier and to start the work of not only designing it, but permitting it and getting it ready for us to put it out to bid for construction. It's a pretty large project, and we were able, luckily, to bring on GZA as our prime designer. They've been very instrumental in getting us to this first level of design. Also, they bring a lot of experience in maritime and waterfront design. That's primarily their business, that and other infrastructure projects. RMF Engineering, they're engineering for mechanical and electrical, mainly designed for the vessel. They are on board with doing the design for both the SUNY Maritime and the Mass Maritime project. So we wanted to bring their expertise on board for that, so they're assisting with that. And Haley Ward is a civil engineering and mechanical and electrical engineering group that has done a lot of work at Castine and in Maine Maritime. So we wanted to bring them on board, mainly because of their experience with working with the Academy moving forward. On the right, I work for a company called Collier's Project Leaders. We service owners and help them weave through and work through the project milestones and to help them make the right decisions on moving forward. And of course, we got the Philly Shipyard and Tote Services who are actually constructing the new NSMV, the training ship. And of course, we got the MARAD, Maritime Administration, who we're working hand in hand with from the federal government on not only they're supplying the vessel, we also have to work through guidelines that they're giving us for the design and construction. So we got a great team built on this, and we've made a lot of headway since we started in August. So what I wanted to do is kind of go through some high-level timelines right now. So we started in earnest design work in October. With that, what we needed to do was to find out exactly what we needed to do for this vessel. What requirements does this vessel have? It has a lot different than what we have now, requirements for the existing training ship. So we had to really dig in, find out what we needed to put in for infrastructure, what the pier needs to look like, what all the utilities, the power, the sewer, the water, the steam. So we really worked with them. We also took time to meet with the town. We met with Sean Blodgett and others to kind of get them understanding of where we're going and to get to this point, our initial discussion with neighbors. So this is just the beginning of our discussions with this. What we're looking for is we're working rapidly because we do have a deadline. They're building our vessel. So right now we're looking at a overall completion and getting ready for the vessel to be delivered in October 2024. That's going to come quick. So what we've done is we've built some timelines and milestones to meet that timing. So we're working with our design partners to target this coming April to finish the design. We're looking in the May timeline to construction procurement. We have to work through state Bureau of General Services guidelines on our procurement of our contractors. We need to get pricing. And the market's tough right now. So we want to make sure that we can get the right contractor to do the work and to coordinate the work. We're working to get our permitting complete. One of the reasons we are working through this process is to get all the permits. There's quite a bit of permits that need to be reviewed, and I'll talk a little bit later about the permits that we're working on now. Right now, we're targeting June to start work. We're going to phase this project, and I'll show in a deck slide later what we're trying to do with phasing. We're not going to be able to do it all at once. The academy still has to operate, so we're going to do this in phases, but in a way that we can meet our milestones. So we're really plugging for construction completion in September. There's multiple phases, like Jerry had mentioned. This is phase 1. There's a long-term master plan for the waterfront, but this is phase 1. Get ready for the new vessel. So that's our overall timelines for phase 1. So right now, this is what we feel our pier design is as of the end of last month. We have the vessel design, or orientation of the vessel, roughly the size of the new vessel, and what we need to do to accommodate the vessel and to provide proper mooring and berthing of the vessel. So I'm going to go through some project components here that will kind of explain a little bit of what we're looking at here. So within the project, we're looking to replace existing deteriorated timber pier with a concrete supported pier by steel piles. So what that means is the existing pier, that's going to be removed and replaced with a steel pier, piling and a concrete deck. Right now it's a full timber system. It was originally built in 1960. I think there was a little bit of a renovation to it in 1990, so it's past its prime. Also, we have some limitations on loading on that, so we can't drive vehicles on it. The loading is just not there for it, so we have to bring that up to snuff. We're going to add 3 new pier-supported concrete dolphins. Those dolphins are what they tie the bow and the stern of the boat for proper mooring. So there's going to be 3 new concrete dolphins. To access the dolphins on this side, there's going to be a graded, kind of like a walkway, like a elevated walkway. So that's where they actually will get out on there and tie off to their bollards there. We're going to be building out a newer dock section here, a new T-face with a new access here. This is also going to be steel piles and a concrete deck. It's going to match what we're replacing the existing with. What that does is it gives us a new pier face, a longer pier face, and also there's different utilities that come off this new vessel that we need to accommodate. So power, water, steam, sewer, and then access for the new vessel through an area right here. We're also adding some floating docks. So right now we have floating docks here, here, and here. We're going to be adding floating docks in these sections, mainly to get prepped for the Academy's future. They're going to have different needs for small boats, small vessels, and this is just getting the Academy prepped for their future and to provide more floating dock space. Right now, they're struggling with their dock space. So they need additional space. Another area that we're going to take care of, this area right here. It's a bulkhead or a seawall that we have that's deteriorated. It is not in good shape, and this is where that beach area is. Most of you guys probably have seen there's like a composite wall system. It's failing, so we have to get it replaced. So we're replacing that section of the bulkhead or seawall. Pretty much everything else, the seawall is pretty good. We are going to work with the town. The town needs to repair the top of their bulkhead. So we're going to coordinate with Sean. We've already talked to Sean and the town. We're going to try to see if we can coordinate our work with their work so we could literally take advantage of having contractors here to help the town minimize their impacts and also try to get a really good price for redoing that. So we'll work with the town on that. With this new vessel, again, I mentioned we're going to need new utilities. This vessel is going to be more energy efficient. We're literally not going to be burning any fossil fuels while this thing's sitting at the dock. We are going to provide a brand new electrical service down to the vessel. We're going to install a new transformer behind oh, I don't know what that address is, but the White House behind there on our property. We're going to bring electrical lines down so that we could tie in. So when the vessel's at the pier, it's going to be on all electric. We're also going to provide steam line to it for heating from the existing steam boiler. And we're going to bring a sewer line connection and water line connection to it. So pretty much utilities that'll come down and be underground and then through the pier face to the new vessel. Also, what we're going to do is right now there's some dredging that has to happen. There's some issues with some siltation right in this area right here. So essentially a maintenance dredge operation to get the depth a little bit deeper in this area here. Very minor. It's going to be basically what we have for maintenance dredge permits already. So that'll be part of it.
If I could interrupt. Yeah. For reference, that's the area where Bowdoin currently is.
Yeah, right there. So that's the project in a nutshell. It's mainly the pier. It's mainly infrastructure to build out the new pier to support the vessel. With this work, there is some environmental permitting that's necessary. One of the permits, and this project is subject to the Natural Resource Protection Act, which we're working with the Maine DEP. Then it also is subject to a Category 2 Army Corps permit. Our folks at GZA and their permitting specialists have had pre-application meetings with those regulatory agencies, and the feedback that they received from those agencies, they're putting into their future permit applications. So they've run through this, they've brought up their items, and that's the items that we're going to be putting in our permit applications. With the Natural Resource Protection Act application, we're doing an endangered species evaluation, and that coordination is ongoing right now. So that evaluation is happening as we speak. And during the application period, those items will be continuing to be reviewed as we move forward through. The anticipation for this work is mainly piles that are going to be driven for the new pier sections. That pier work, that pile driving, is going to be conducted from barges that'll be set into the water. Pile driving would be mainly vibratory pile driving and or some hammer driving equipment. One of the mentions here we want to make sure of is that there's a soft start pile driving procedure which will be used at every beginning of every pile driving session. So what we're going to do is, I'll get into a slide about logistics and trying to minimize impacts, but we wanted to at least review that. One of the big things that we were reviewing and we know is a item that we're going to need to coordinate with the neighbors and the town of Castine and whole is just the logistics and coordination of the construction. This is a good sized project, and we want to make sure that we're doing this project in a way and in a manner that we're going to minimize as much impact as we can to the town. So with that, we talked about making sure that our information flow is transparent as possible, and working with the town manager, the harbor master, and others to make sure that we're open and open communications throughout the whole process. Continuously communicating with the folks that we need to coordinate with. So we're going to continue to work with Sean and the harbor master committee. We're going to continue to have outreaches and to be able to start talking about our progress as we move forward. Jerry mentioned that their town and gowns, the future town and gowns presentations, we're going to be able to start to provide more information as the design starts to get developed further and we start to get more understanding of the coordination that we have to take with the town. And coordinate with Castine on overall areas of collaboration. And we know that the town waterfront is a very happening place during the summertime. We know there's a lot of tourists that come here. We know like the Captain's Catch. We don't want to slow any of that down. So we're really being sensitive about how do we coordinate, deliveries? How do we minimize like traffic impacts that are from the construction? And we've actually started talking about, okay, where do all the contractors park? We're putting together plans where they're not going to park down there. They're going to park on other areas of MMA property, and we'd shuttle them down. A lot of the work is going to be barge-based, so these folks are going to come and get onto the barges and work. Deliveries onto the site. We're going to coordinate those. That we're not going to allow deliveries to be done on an ongoing basis. We're going to have them deliver as they need, so we're not going to store down on the, and we're essentially not going to allow the construction folks to impact like the parking and the flow down there. So we're going to work with them. There's going to be more details that come about once we find the contractor. One of the first things I'm going to do is work with them on a logistics plan. It's got to get approved before they even start construction. MMA, the town, has to know what they're going to do in their plans. So, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, just further to what Eric's saying, look, there's some things that you can't avoid. If you're going to rebuild a pier, there's going to be some construction activity. What I've said is that for each component of this project, we're going to minimize the impact as much as we can using the input and the information that we get from the folks in the town and our own knowledge and history of what's important to the town. The parking is one example. Simply not allow the contractors to park in the public spaces. The timing, to the extent possible, try to structure the activities with minimal impact, both to the residential activities, but also the local economy and the tourist trade here. With the pile driving, there's simply no way that anybody rebuilding a pier, much like the pier that exists now and many evolutions of it over the years in the past, can promise that there's not going to be any pile driving or that there's not going to be any noise from pile driving. There will be. What we can do, I think, is apply some good judgment, more modern technology with the soft drives first, and try as much as possible to structure the timing around that to minimize impact. My preference would be to, be able to get those steel pilings in there without any pile driving. I think we're going to get them a long ways with the soft vibration, but some of it is going to end up being, some impact. I had a resident ask me about the impact of that, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and immediately called the design engineers and told them that really need their sense for how much of an impact that's going to be and ensuring that it wouldn't be any effect on any of the other areas. I think there's going to be some noise effects, but from what I'm being told, no impact on structures. Just not that kind of vibration. Environmentally, we're doing every single thing we can to minimize the environmental impact. Now, the simple truth is, though, that every time that man uses the waterfront, every time we have installed a piling, a dock, any infrastructure along our waterfront, there is some impact. We're trying to minimize that as much as possible. We've tried to keep the footprint of the existing pier as much as possible, gone out a fair amount further out in that allows us to have a relatively modest rise to accommodate for the projected 75-year sea level rise. That's just necessary. We're also trying to find ways to turn this project into an asset for an opportunity to work with the town on some other things that the town itself has to do. My understanding is that the cap along the existing town dock wharf is eroded away, and that has to be rebuilt. We're trying to time that with the use of our barges to be able to, coordinate the same timing, the construction, but also reduce costs as much as possible by using our barges. Yep. Trying to do as much of the work as possible from a barge, from the water side, to reduce the impact on land side. Trucks, vehicle, trailers, workers. Do as much of that from the water side as we can. I do think that the new vessel will be, well, I'm told, and I believe it, that with the state-of-the-art technology that is on it, it will be much quieter than the current vessel, probably the quietest that any that a vessel can possibly be. I don't think you're going to hear this vessel. There, as to the emissions profile, it's going to have state-of-the-art emissions technology and no fossil fuels converted, consumed, burned while this is on the dock. Every one of those things that we can do, we're trying to do. But the simple truth is that we have to rebuild the dock. And just like all of the infrastructure that exists along the waterfront right now, there was a point in time when we had to rebuild it. I know when I was here in the late 80s was when they were just starting to rebuild the pier that exists as we know it today. That included a new dolphin to the northeast, and we'll have to add dolphin infrastructure in the other direction now. I'm going to try to minimize the impact of that as much as possible. But obviously, in a town like Castine with 400 years of history of building ships, each one is a little bit different, and hosting it is a little bit different along the waterfront. But look forward to hearing input, thoughts that you have about other things that we could do to make accommodations, but also questions of other information that we might be able to provide.
Yeah, I just want to make one more comment. And Jerry, I skipped right over it, but Jerry hit on a point, sea level rise. This project is taking this into consideration. We have to plan for that. It's coming. Right now, the new pier face is going to be 2.2 feet taller to be able to account for that 75-year sea level rise that they're accounting for, and that's important. I think all of these waterfront properties are going to be dealing with this at some point. Because we're dealing with a new vessel coming in, they're taking the time to do that now, so we're prepped for the future.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
It's a water rise question. Is the current street level of the MMA dock and town dock going to be raised?
Just for phase one, the pier is the only thing being dealt with for sea rise right now.
There's an additional phase will be required later, or?
No, I think what Eric's referring to is that what we've said is that there's the opportunity working with the town. There's been a lot of discussion in the town. Well, over time, adding facilities or adjusting facilities or modifying existing buildings along there, all the way down to like where the captain's catch is, and even the outdoor bathrooms. Mm-hmm. And what we've said is that we're going to focus right now on what we are calling phase one, and that is the pier. As to all of the other issues that might be put on the board, none of which have been written up or anything, like remodeling the buildings that are along there and going all the way down. We haven't done any planning for that. That's what he's talking about, future phases. As to the tarmac or the blacktop surface that's there right now, no plans to increase that. If that's something that becomes necessary as part of a project or an idea that the town would like us to consider in subsequent phases, we will.
So what will be higher then?
So the just the T, just the T all the way out at the end, that'll be 2 feet higher, but that'll rise over a couple hundred feet. I'm not sure you would see it by the naked eye, but it has to be higher for the 75-year projection. But go back to, if you would for a second, go back to the timeline and milestones. As to the, is that the one with the logistics? No, the logistics one. As to the timeline.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, a couple of questions that I've received just in outreach and communications with residents is the timing of the vehicle flows. It's something that Sean Blodgett made, a point that he made as well, and trying to minimize the impact, the workload of workers on the ingress and egress into that area. I think we're going to be able to do an awful lot there between, and as I said, we're not going to let any of them park in and around that area. I think that area is going to largely stay open enough for the parking of those workers.
How many feet out into the harbor are you adding to the pier?
About 130.
Thank you.
Regarding the, oh, wow, sorry.
Sorry?
Regarding the increase, the 2-foot rise for the pier, to meet that 75-year sea level rise threshold, doesn't that sort of imply that the portion that's currently there from which the rise originates is too low to meet the 75-year threshold, and at some point will have to be raised as well?
Yeah, probably. I mean, the simple truth is that infrastructure all across America, well, all across the world, wasn't designed and constructed at the time in anticipation of the increase in sea level rise that we're now experiencing, but also projecting forward. And those projections are based upon NOAA. It's the best available data and their models that we have. But yeah, there's no doubt that infrastructure, coastal infrastructure all over the world is having to be redesigned.
Hi, I'm Scott Vogel. I'm wondering, the egress and access to the Maine Maritime Academy down over Main Street through the parking lot at the town dock is going to be trepidous at best. It's going to be difficult for big trucks to get down there, and I don't see any way that they can really do that successfully without interrupting at some point through the process. I would like to suggest that I was involved with the purchase of the building across from TNC Market. Paul Mercer and I did that. So I'm intimately familiar with the property. It needs to be raised. Paul and I had talked about that being an entrance to the Maine Maritime Academy shorefront facility. I don't know what the plans are now, but if you was to raise that building and put in a little small driveway or road from west to east diagonally across that lot, you could come down Perkins Street, back into your facility, drive out, go over Water Street, and go out of town, and never go on Main Street and never go on the town dock.
Interesting.
Oh, geez, now I gotta put on my glasses. Sorry. Hi, I'm Mark Pelletier. I have a few questions. There'll have to be a construction management plan presented, and I think the more transparent and the more public it can become, I think the better the outcome. I worked in the construction management business for many years. We had a saying, and I think it's very important: informed noise is a lot quieter than uninformed noise.
Yeah.
And I think that has to be a mantra moving forward.
Can I respond to that?
Please.
So I had mentioned earlier that what we're going to do once we bring on our contractor, one of the biggest things they're going to need to do is put together a logistics plan, a construction management setup that you had mentioned, and we do that on all projects. So we'll end up doing that and be transparent about that.
Great. A couple other things. I would suggest that 3D renderings of the project would be a lot more helpful for almost everybody in this room who may or may not be able to read civil engineering plans. Brooke asked the question, how far out is the new boat or the new pier going to be located? A drawing of that, which is very easily produced, I think would be very helpful for people to see. And the last question is, or the last two questions are, I assume that you're working with the town of Castine on the comprehensive plan for the town, because I think that's critical. We shouldn't be backing into your plan. It should be well coordinated. And I guess we also need to think about the financial burden for the residents and the taxpayers of the town of Castine, because there's going to be some residual costs that will be probably borne by the town unless Maine Maritime and the federal funders of this make accommodations. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I don't really need it, but just questioning is, with your fire suppression? If Randy Stearns. I'd like to know if you've got any fire suppression systems set up for this new project with the new ship and how you're going to handle that.
It's interesting that I was just thinking about that today. Of course, the fire suppression systems on the vessel are designed and being constructed at Philadelphia Shipyard right now. As far as the fire systems for the pier, I believe that is in an upcoming phase, and that is something very much on the list of the design engineers.
Second part would be, what's the impact you're going out 130 or whatever it was to the town dock? How is that going to change the one, making an entrance to the town dock and hitting with the tides? And, it's going out quite a ways. Have you guys studied that at all and the impact it would have?
I think it's certainly something to take a look at. I think that is something we will. Hold on just a second. Let me get that note if I could before the next. Thank you.
I'm Gordon MacArthur. I'm one of the select persons here in Castine.
Yes, sir.
I would request right now that you include the select board in your discussions, because this is the first time we're hearing this, and I'm very disappointed about that, because we should have been involved in this from the start, because we are the people that make the policy decisions for the town of Castine. So please include us on all further meetings of this project.
Indeed.
What's that?
Indeed, yes, sir.
Now, with that having been said, I have a few questions also. The problem that I see is that bringing stuff down to the town dock in the time frame that you outline here is going to be very difficult to maintain any kind of open parking on the town dock. And I just don't know how that's going to be done unless you bring pilings and stuff like that in by barge rather than by truck. And I would suggest that you might consider bringing all that kind of materials in by barge. And I'm sure there are places very close to Castine that those things could be loaded and brought over.
It's a good suggestion. Thank you.
You're extending it out 130 feet, as you said. I too have concerns about the impact on the town dock and the circulation in and out of the town dock. And I question why you need to extend it 130 feet. Maybe it's more convenient for the academy, but it's not convenient for the town to have to go out another 130 feet unless there's a very good reason for that. And I would ask that you provide an answer to that at some time in the fairly near future.
Take a look at that.
The environmental impacts you haven't got into yet, and I hope you will before we're done here tonight. The timeline for construction is fine, but where's the existing ship going to be when they come back?
You mean when it returns from cruise?
When it returns from cruise, there's no way that you can put it in there and drive the piling at the same time because the barges are going to be
You're
there.
talking about the existing USS Tanner.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a question right now. It's quite possible that, well, the simple truth is we haven't totally made decisions on that. There are a host of options. One is that the students are offloaded and the vessel doesn't get docked there so that the construction can be completed as soon as possible. Another option could be potentially offloading the students before it gets to Castine. I don't know for sure. We're working on that right now. But yeah, I mean, it's like with every single decision you make for a major project like this, there are pros and cons, and you try your best to weigh each and every one of them, but that's clearly one. Thank you for that.
Another question that I have, because the new ship is larger and can accommodate more students, does that mean that Maine Maritime is contemplating increasing its enrollment above the cap that it's had for several years, which is about 950?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the things that former President Len Tyler had said to me early on is that I know the academy's been as high as like 1,200, but he's told me that at that time it was really a strain on the town and a strain on the campus. I think probably around 1,000 is the max capacity before you start really pinching the resources of both campus and the town. The occupancy of the vessel was not designed by us, and it's not designed in context with an intention around enrollment.
Okay. Well, I do think that a capacity of 1,000 or less for the academy is appropriate for the town of Castine, especially because your dormitory space doesn't equal that.
Right.
And the capacity of the town to house many more than 1,000 becomes a real problem for the town.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have a couple more questions here that might have some more later on. How does town of Castine benefit from the project that you're talking about right now?
I would say that the town of Castine and Maine Maritime and the state and the country benefit from the national security multi-mission vessel in a whole host of ways. One, the ways that we have always benefited from having that institution in collaboration with the town, and it's a partnership, producing that next generation of mariners that are absolutely necessary. That is the benefit. That's why we exist, or why we were originally chartered. Now, of course, we've expanded our degree programs over time to provide a broader host of higher education opportunities for students. But yeah, I mean, we've always been proud to be a college that has a high return on investment, particularly for first-generation students. In fact, right now, ranked #1 in the entire country of all public colleges. #1 return on investment for a college right here in Castine, Maine. It's a huge benefit. It's a huge benefit to each and every one of the graduates who have matriculated through this place. And I see a couple of them in the audience right now, and you're looking at one. This new project, like the new project that existed before it, like the new ship, or like the ship, the Tanner, that exists now, and the ship before that, the Upshur, that existed when I was here, provided extraordinary benefit to me, I can tell you, as did the town itself. It's where I worked and partially paid for this education, for this opportunity. Tremendous number of benefits. Being able to host a training platform to create that next generation of mariners and the next generation of leaders has lots of benefits.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just one other question at this point.
Yes, sir.
Could you tell us the dimensions of the new ship?
Yeah.
Length, width, and height.
Yep. So.
If you have a picture, that would even be better.
So the overall length is 525.08 feet, I'm told, which is about 25 feet longer than the current ship, about 11 feet shorter than the ship that I had here. This current ship is smaller than the prior ship. Overall width, 88.58 feet. That's about 15 feet wider than the current vessel, the Tanner, about 9 feet wider than the prior ship that many of you remember, the Upshur. As to the height, it's about 100 feet off the water line, which is about 15 feet higher than Tanner. And best I can tell, I've pressed for this information. I've been able to get complete confirmation, but about 9 feet higher than the prior ship.
That's to the top of what on the ship?
The highest point. Yes, sir. Thank you. And I'll follow up on those other issues, Mr. Chairman.
What
Mr.
is the
Scott.
reason? What is the reason for 130 feet further to the south for the pier?
Well, I think primarily it's to accommodate the sea level rise. It also accommodates the existing operations inside the working waterfront of the academy. So you have the Pentagoet, the tug and barge program, you have the schooner Bowdoin, you have the research vessel, you have the Clark, which is the platform for the marine transportation students to do their coastal navigation, and then a whole host of launches and other working vessels that access the sailboats, the dinghies that are out on the mooring fields. With this new vessel and the modifications and the different mooring points, the T itself has to be somewhat wider. So if that goes on the inside, you would shut off those interior operations. So in order to maintain the operations and all of the license programs, degree programs, sailing team, you have to push the whole thing out some. And I suspect that it's a combination, kind of a trade-off between that and knowing that you have to go higher for the sea level rise and then mapping out what that space is. You may also notice that the vessel is turned around. Again, all of the design features of the vessel, Maine Maritime has no control over it. Those are all controlled by the federal government. We have no say in those designs, but one of the key distinctions is the brow itself, the main hatch or door, if you will, on the side of the ship. In the past, the vessels that we've had have always had port side brows. This is a starboard side brow. So the only way to get on her is by turning her around.
I'm going to change hats here for a minute. I'm the harbor master.
Yes, sir.
There's a couple of issues going to happen down there that I think you should be aware of, and I don't know what you can do to prevent or at least assist in reconciling. One of them is the mooring field. I've been working with Rebecca, who's on somebody's team, I'm not sure who, but part of your group on the moorings, and I haven't gotten anything back from them as to where, because I've been locating moorings in the area for her, but she hasn't located the boat to me. So I don't know what ramifications are happening here when this goes out 130 feet plus the width of the boat. And I'd like to know that sooner than later because we have some, a number of people looking for new moorings, and I don't really know what to do in that area right now. But more importantly, we have a lot of really nice, large, up to 90 feet, sometimes a little more, schooners and yachts that come into the town dock. Right now, it's difficult at best for any of these people to leave with an outgoing tide and the wind out of the west. Now we're going to be out substantially more. There's been a number of incidents over the years, and I've been here a long time, where boats got caught down in that basin. Then masts got broken on the tie lines to the Dolphin, and it's really difficult right now, as it is, to get out of the town dock with a 90-foot boat, especially a schooner that doesn't have a lot of power, on the outgoing tide and the west wind. Down in Port Harbor Marine in South Portland, they have a buoy system of like bumpers that's almost, I think they use it more as a wake preventing thing, but it also would allow somehow, I think you need to be aware that boats leaving the town dock on an outgoing tide with the west wind, they're going to be in your face all the time. It's just nearly impossible now on a high wind. And with this excessive additional, I don't mean excessive because that's the wrong adjective, but the additional space that you're going to absorb going out into the middle of the harbor is going to make it really difficult for people leaving the town dock. And I think you need to be aware of it, concerned of it, and do something to make sure that these boats don't get caught in the basin.
Does the current vessel, the Tanner, provide any wind break?
Well, I mean, if you wanted to go on the positive side of it, the ship that you're buying or whatever you're doing and where it's going to be located is going to be substantially advantageous on southeast winds coming into the dock and all kinds. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to it. And I could go on to that easily, but a concern is getting these larger boats off the town dock when it's going to be difficult.
Oh, yeah.
So I think you need to be aware of it, and I think you should try to put something in your plan so that at least between the existing pier and the new pier, you can't get caught up in there. Now, I don't know what the answer is, but he's an engineer, he can figure it out.
Okay. Take a look at that. Thank you, sir.
In support of what the harbor master just said, I suggest that you use Bowden and its very accomplished captain and crew to determine what Bowden is able to do in those close waters. She goes in and out almost every day in every kind of weather, and she is somewhat of the size of quite a lot of visitors that come in there.
Good point. Thank you.
Any additional comments?
Would it be possible for you to show with the laser where the current boat is so that we can just compare, like how much further to the south the new one will come? If you could show, you know. Sure. Okay, thank you.
Can you see that laser?
Yes.
So this is the existing pier face right here.
Mm-hmm.
The existing boat sits like, vessel sits right here
Okay.
with the bow facing this way.
Okay, so how far out, like compared to the Dolphins, how far out is the stern of the current?
Well, you can see, the current mooring runs a breast line or a perpendicular line all the way to the shore. Those of you all are familiar with that, right about there. Right, goes across, draped into the water ashore, so you can kind of see where the line of the current breast line goes across there.
Would it be similar to the Dolphin that is to the north, to that one? Would it be similar, maybe even with that?
I'm going to say ballpark, but I'm hesitant to say for sure.
Okay.
I think we
Okay.
can follow up and try to figure that out.
Okay,
But I
and-
think in that area.
And will the Dolphins be as high as the pier?
I don't know the heights. Probably about what the current dolphin is that was added in '89.
Right, but you're raising everything, so they'll be like
2 feet.
2.5
yeah.
feet higher than that. Okay, okay, thank you.
As I sit here and listen to this discussion, it somewhat dawns on me that the distance that the pier is presently projected to move into the harbor is a concern of the people in the town. So one suggestion I might make is when you start to get further along in the process, presenting some alternative scenarios that may shorten that a little bit. And I understand it'll be an engineering challenge because you do have to get to the 75-year ocean increase level. But it also seems that moving that pier out is accomplishing additional goals of the university besides just the ship. So there's a natural trade-off between wanting to accomplish those goals and the cost of moving that ship to the town as far out in the harbor as it is. I'm not saying it's not worth every one of those ideas or that the engineering design as drawn is not the optimal solution, but I have a sense that a lot of people, myself included, would love to see as many options as possible to be able to weigh those benefits.
Can can you make sure I have your contact info? Thank you, sir.
Regarding the, is this on? Okay. So regarding the new pier construction, will that be solid bulkheads all the way, beneath the surface, or will it be on pilings?
Beyond pilings.
So it will not be. I'm just thinking about water movement through that area, and also what will you have to do to the existing? I'll call it the T coming off the off the landmass. What will have to happen to that to meet the 30-inch, or I think it was a 30-inch increase in height?
Yes.
Will that be changed as well?
Yes. So, like Gary has mentioned, this is the 2.2 foot rise here. There'll be a rise in grade from there up to the 2.2. So, yeah. And again, this is all on piles and just a concrete deck instead of a timber deck.
Hi, I'm Roberta Boskowitz. I wanted to start by thanking you for putting this on tonight and for presenting this to the public and to all of us. I'm just curious regarding the natural resource protection permit, and you mentioned an endangered species studies. Are there other specific studies that you can discuss at this time?
Yeah, I think, well, I'll let Eric respond, but I think the impact on species is analyzed in the context of both of those, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers. I mean, they have to take a look at particularly the aspects of pile driving. Anytime you touch or disturb the bottom, I think the species analysis will be done through that process.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi there, quick question. The current dolphin where the tug sits and the floating docks there, will those remain as respect to crowding around the town dock? Or like that, yeah, exactly, that there. Will those still stay?
Yeah, these will maintain and the floating dock sections will be maintained. The only thing new would be the replacement of the existing pier and the new pier face.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to come out. One question that I heard asked, I don't think anybody addressed, is the comp planning process. And indeed, we will work closely with the town on comprehensive planning in context with that plan. My understanding is that that there wouldn't be a need, although there'd be construction permits, there wouldn't be a need for a comp plan amendment, small scale or large scales, because it currently exists within an approved comp plan designation, a land use category, as would be the case with zoning as well. But we can follow up with that.
I haven't heard about the environmental impact that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, trying to minimize the environmental impacts as much as possible with each aspect of both the design, but also the logistics, and of course the analysis through the permitting process will continue to be ongoing. Biological assessment, with each and every aspect of it, from water to land to species to air. Air emissions are a key part of environmental impact. Noise is a key part of environmental impact. We're pleased that it'll have the state-of-the-art air emissions technology, assured that this is going to have the lowest emissions profile of any modern ship that is being constructed. That's part of how the design decisions were made about the propulsion systems themselves and the scrubbers and the stacks. As to noise and noise pollution, I'm told this is going to be about the quietest ship that was ever built. And as to the dredging, to the extent that there's impact on the bottom, as there was every time a piling was driven for the current pier, and quite frankly for all of the docks that we have constructed in Castine over the years, that all has to be analyzed in context with impact of the soils. And then the species, taking a look at both the marine species, but also the fowl.
Jerry, if I could just, I don't mean to say this, at the end of the day, what I'm hearing here tonight is this town is going to be better off for the rest of us not putting hydrocarbons into our school. That's not keeping me awake at night because somebody forgot to turn the blowers off. That's not dumping sewage, which is not treated as precisely as a day. I think there may be some navigation issues in getting off that dock, but my guess is that it's not as serious as it sounds. I'm hearing that we are going to be a better place for this building, and that's what
I hope so. Thank you, sir.
I just want to go back to the environmental thing again, because in your public notice, you refer to anticipated environmental impacts. And I still don't understand what those anticipated environmental impacts, other than the pile driving, are. It was in your public notice, so you must have some idea what they are.
The ones that I just listed, each of those categories, I would say.
I understand the ones you listed, but I'm sure there are other environmental impacts that have to be addressed in an application. And I'm just curious, if you're not there yet, that's fine, that's your answer. But if you are there, I'd like to hear about it.
I don't think we're there yet.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies it.
Yes, sir.
Do you have an overlay of the footprint of the existing ship compared to the proposed footprint of the new ship?
No, I think that's kind of what Sandy was asking, if I may. Sandy, Ms. Oma, I think that's what she was asking, and we'll follow up with that. I think the best we could do was show that general area where we know for sure the line, that breast line that goes across the water down on the bottom and comes up on the beach and is augured on the beach. That's over there by that other dolphin. Yeah, no. Yeah, right about there. We know that line that currently goes across to the beach. That's the point of reference. Yeah, I agree. Can I get your contact info, sir?
Sure.
Rachel, or, yeah, thank you. Thank you for everybody taking the time to give us the additional information that we can use as we move forward down this process. It's kind of been an incremental approach. Had, I think, 2 or 3 different town and gown meetings since coming on board, and been able to provide some information about the timeline, the expectation, the phased approach to the shoreside infrastructure modification. And now, this is a follow-on to that, where we can actually add a little bit more detail, and hopefully as we go forward, we'll just continue to complement that. Thank you.